Airlines Flight 302, Tragedy, Betrayal, and the Reckoning of Modern Aviation. Prologue. A new dawn in African aviation. On March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines stood as a beacon of African aviation. The airline, renowned for its safety record and growth, symbolized progress on the continent. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 was to be another routine journey of the 737 MAX 8 aircraft carrying 149 passengers and 8 crew members from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to Nairobi, Kenya. The aircraft itself represented the cutting edge of modern aviation. Boeing's 737 MAX series promised greater fuel efficiency, reduced emissions, and advanced automation systems designed to simplify piloting. Airlines around the globe embraced it, eager to capitalize on its operational advantages. But beneath the sleek surface of the MAX 8 lay a design flaw that would cost hundreds of lives and reveal cracks in an aviation industry driven by profit. The fateful takeoff. At 8:30 a.m., Flight 332 roared down the runway at Addis Ababa's Bole International Airport. In the cockpit, Captain Yared Getachew, a respected and experienced pilot, was at the helm, assisted by First Officer Ahmed Noor Mohammed, an enthusiastic young co-pilot, still building his hours. The takeoff seemed smooth. Passengers settled into their seats, some gazing out the windows at the Ethiopian landscape, while others prepared for a short flight to Kenya. Yet within seconds of leaving the ground, subtle signs of trouble began to emerge. The struggle begins. At 8:39 a.m., just after takeoff, the aircraft's sensors detected a problem. The angle of attack device measuring the plane's pitch relative to oncoming airflow began transmitting incorrect data. This triggered the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS, a software designed to push the plane's nose downward to prevent a stall. However, there was no real danger of stalling. The AOA sensor had malfunctioned, and MCAS acted on faulty information. The pilots immediately felt the effects. The aircraft began to pitch downward. Captain Yared instinctively pulled the nose back up, battling the automated system. For every correction he made, MCAS counteracted, forcing the nose down again. In the cabin, passengers sensed the erratic movements. Some clutched their armrests, while others exchanged worried glances. Flight attendants, trained to project calm in emergencies, worked to reassure everyone, though they too felt the growing tension. The desperate fight. By 8:41 a.m., the pilots realized they were in a dire situation. The controls were increasingly unresponsive, and the automated MCAS system activated repeatedly, overriding their manual inputs. The cockpit became a cacophony of alarms, warnings, and desperate radio calls. Captain Yared radioed air traffic control, requesting an immediate return to Addis Ababa. His voice remained steady, but the stress was evident. "We're having flight control problems," he reported. Permission was granted, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. As the pilots frantically scanned their instruments and attempted to regain control, the aircraft began losing altitude. The ground rushed closer, and the window for recovery was narrowing. Despite their training and expertise, Captain Yared and First Officer Ahmed were fighting a battle they could not win, against a system they had not been fully trained to understand or disable. The catastrophic impact. At 8:44 a.m., just 6 minutes after takeoff, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 32 plummeted into a field near the town of Bishoftu, about 40 miles from Addis Ababa. The impact was devastating, creating a crater and scattering debris over a wide area. All 157 people aboard the aircraft perished instantly. News of the crash reverberated across the globe. Families waiting at Nairobi's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport were met with silence and anguish as the flight failed to arrive. Grieving relatives demanded answers. The aviation industry braced for the fallout. The investigation, uncovering the truth. The investigation into Flight 302 was swift and thorough, led by Ethiopian authorities with international assistance. Initial findings pointed to striking similarities between this crash and the earlier tragedy of Lion Air Flight 610, another Boeing 737 MAX 8 that had crashed in Indonesia just 5 months prior, killing 189 people. Both crashes involved MCAS, a system Boeing had introduced to compensate for the 737 MAX's redesigned engines. These larger engines altered the aircraft's aerodynamics, making it more prone to nose-up stalls during certain conditions. MCAS was designed to address this, automatically adjusting the plane's pitch without pilot input. However, it relied on a single AOA sensor called the ATA, a critical flaw that made the system vulnerable to failure. Investigators discovered shocking details. Inadequate training. Pilots worldwide were unaware of MCAS or how to disable it. Boeing had not included detailed information about the system in its manuals, assuming it would rarely activate. Rush certification. Boeing had pushed for rapid approval of the 737 MAX to compete with Airbus, pressuring the FAA to expedite its certification process. Corporate negligence. Internal emails and documents revealed that some Boeing engineers had raised concerns about MCAS during development, but these warnings were dismissed to meet deadlines and reduce costs. Global fallout. Within days of the crash, regulators worldwide grounded the entire 737 MAX fleet. Airlines canceled orders, and Boeing faced intense scrutiny. Public confidence in the aircraft and the company plummeted. The Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) also came under fire for its lax oversight. Critics accused the agency of allowing Boeing too much authority in certifying its own aircraft. A U.S. congressional investigation later confirmed systemic failures in both Boeing's design process and the FAA's regulatory role. For Boeing, the financial and reputational damage was staggering. The company halted production of the 737 MAX, faced lawsuits from victims' families, and paid billions in settlements and fines. Internally, Boeing underwent leadership changes and implemented sweeping reforms, but the scars on its legacy remain. The human toll. Beyond the corporate fallout, the tragedy of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 is a deeply human story. The victims included aid workers, students, business travelers, and families. Among them were Kenyans, Canadians, Americans, and citizens of many other nations. Each life lost represented unfulfilled dreams and unimaginable grief for their loved ones. Survivors' families became vocal advocates for justice, pushing for accountability and stricter safety measures. Their voices helped ensure that the lessons from Flight 302 would not be forgotten. Lessons learned and the legacy of change. The crashes of Lion Air 610 and Ethiopian Airlines 302 reshaped the aviation industry. Regulators tightened oversight, and Boeing overhauled the MCAS system, adding redundancies and improving pilot training. While the 737 MAX eventually returned to service, its legacy is a cautionary tale of how cost-cutting and complacency can lead to catastrophic consequences. For the victims' families and the global aviation community, the tragedy of Flight 302 remains a painful reminder of the importance of safety, transparency, and accountability in an industry where lives are always at stake.